What happens when a young lion targets a powerful buffalo, only to be overpowered and left wounded? Watch as Mark, a wildlife conservationist, finds the injured lion and steps in to help, uncovering a deeper bond between man and nature. In the vast savanna of Tanzania, within the Serengeti National Park, a young lion crouched silently, watching a massive herd of buffalo grazing peacefully under the scorching sun. His golden mane fluttered slightly in the breeze, and his fiery eyes locked on the herd, scanning for any weakness. For days, the lion had observed the buffalo from afar, analyzing their movements and searching for a vulnerable target. Usually, lions would hunt the elderly or the young, the ones that had strayed from the herd or were weaker than the rest. However, hunger gnawed at him, and the impatience of the chase pushed him to make a riskier decision. Today, he had set his eyes on a large, strong buffalo at the center of the herd. The buffalo was in its prime, powerful and healthy, but the lion was desperate. He crouched lower, holding his breath as he awaited the perfect moment to strike. The herd of buffalo moved lazily, unaware of the predator lurking in the grass. Suddenly, as one buffalo separated from the rest, the lion saw his opportunity. In a flash, he launched himself from the tall grass with astonishing speed, his powerful legs carrying him across the dry savanna. His paws thudded against the earth, sending dust flying in his wake. The herd immediately noticed his presence and let out loud roars of alarm, their heads swiveling to spot the threat. The targeted buffalo, a massive beast, turned around in an instant, its heavy hooves thundering against the ground. The ground seemed to tremble as the buffalo stomped in defense, its breath coming in short, rapid bursts. The lion's leap was swift, but as he reached the buffalo, he failed to secure his grip. Before he could fully latch onto the buffalo's thick hide, the herd of buffalo acted as one. They rushed toward him in a massive, coordinated wave of fury, protecting their own. The lion, realizing the danger, tried to retreat, but it was too late. The lead buffaloes charged, their hooves striking the ground with force, sending a shockwave through the grasslands. The young lion was hit hard by one of the buffalo's massive horns and was flung through the air. He rolled across the dry earth, his golden fur coated in dust as he struggled to regain his footing. The herd wasn't done. They continued to pursue him, their roars echoing across the savanna, shaking the very air around him. With his body battered and his legs trembling from the impact, the lion struggled to escape. Blood began to seep from the deep gashes on his legs and sides, staining his once pristine fur. He tried to run, but his injured leg made each step more painful than the last. The buffaloes were relentless, their pounding hooves growing closer. Just as he thought he would be overtaken, he spotted a dense thicket of bushes nearby. With all the strength he could muster, the lion limped toward the cover, barely managing to slip inside just as the buffaloes charged past. The sounds of the buffalo's pursuit faded as they moved further into the plains. The lion's breathing was labored, the pain from his wounds searing through his body. He knew he couldn't afford to keep running. He was exhausted and injured. As the adrenaline began to fade, he felt his body slacken, and he fell into a dazed stupor, his heart pounding in his chest. The dense brush provided some relief, but he was far from safe. The lion could only listen to the sounds of the savanna around him, hoping the buffalo would lose interest and wander off. Hours passed in silence, and finally, the distant sounds of the herd faded completely. The lion cautiously peeked out from the bushes, his body still shaking from the ordeal. He could hear the wind rustling through the dry grass, the only noise breaking the heavy silence. His wounds throbbed, but he knew he had to keep moving. Despite the pain, he managed to pull himself to his feet, his legs wobbling beneath him as he slowly emerged from the shelter of the thicket. The vast plains stretched before him, empty and quiet. But he knew he was far from out of danger. As the lion limped across the savanna, blood dripping from his injuries, his thoughts were heavy with the weight of defeat. The once majestic predator now appeared weak and vulnerable, his fate uncertain. As the lion limped across the plains, the intense pain from his injuries forced him to slow down. His legs trembled with every step, his body weaker with each passing minute. The once proud hunter, now just a shadow of his former self, dragged his broken body through the endless grasslands, hoping to find somewhere to rest. But he could feel his strength waning, his energy slipping away. The hot sun beat down on his golden fur, making each breath feel heavier than the last. Far in the distance, a patrol vehicle slowly made its way across the savanna. The driver, a seasoned wildlife conservationist named Mark, had been working in the Serengeti for over a decade. He knew these plains like the back of his hand, and it was not uncommon for him to encounter injured animals in need of help. As Mark scanned the horizon through his binoculars, something caught his attention. There, ahead of him, was a lion, unusually sluggish, stumbling with every step. Mark's eyes narrowed. The lion was badly wounded. Without hesitation, Mark took control of the vehicle, urging it forward with a sense of urgency. He kept a careful distance, not wanting to startle the lion, but he knew he had to act quickly. He could see the deep gashes on the lion's body, the blood staining his fur, and he understood the gravity of the situation. If the lion was not helped soon, it would likely succumb to its injuries, either from infection or blood loss. Mark's experience told him that every second counted. As the vehicle approached, the lion's ears twitched, and he turned his head with a low growl, clearly startled but too weak to put up much of a defense. Mark carefully parked the vehicle, his heart racing, and reached for the tranquilizer dart gun that rested beside him. He knew it was crucial to remain calm. A frightened and injured lion could react unpredictably, and he couldn't afford to make a mistake. Taking a deep breath, he aimed and fired. The dart struck the lion in the shoulder, and the effect was almost immediate. The lion staggered for a moment before collapsing to the ground, his body sinking into a state of lethargy. Mark exhaled in relief, but did not lower his guard. He cautiously moved out of the vehicle, grabbing his first aid kit. He approached the lion with steady steps, mindful of the fact that an injured animal could still lash out in fear. With the lion now sedated, Mark examined the wounds carefully. The deep gashes on its legs and flank were a result of the buffalo's vicious charges. Blood was still oozing from the injuries, and the sight of it pained Mark. He had seen countless animals in distress over the years, but there was something particularly moving about seeing such a majestic creature in such a vulnerable state. He gently cleaned the wounds, applied antiseptic, and wrapped them with bandages to stop the bleeding. The lion's breathing was shallow but steady, and Mark couldn't help but wonder whether this mighty animal would ever fully recover. After tending to the wounds, Mark used the radio to contact the conservation center. He reported the situation and suggested that the lion be transported to the nearest wildlife care station for more extensive treatment. However, the management team decided that, given the lion's condition and the park's strict regulations, it would be best to treat the lion on site and monitor his recovery in the wild. Removing him from the natural environment was a last resort, and it was essential to maintain the Serengeti's integrity as a wild sanctuary. Mark continued to keep an eye on the lion's pulse, ensuring it remained stable. He soaked a gauze pad with cool water and gently placed it on the lion's head to alleviate the effects of the heat. As the minutes passed, the lion's condition seemed to improve. his breathing becoming less labored. Mark sat beside him, silently watching, feeling a sense of connection with the animal. In the stillness of the savanna, time seemed to stretch, and Mark could not help but reflect on the power and beauty of the wild. After nearly an hour, the lion's eyes fluttered open. His gaze was unfocused at first, the effects of the tranquilizer still lingering. Slowly, the lion raised his head, his golden mane ruffling in the breeze. He let out a weak growl, the sound barely more than a whisper. Mark smiled faintly, relieved to see the lion stirring. It was a sign that the sedation was wearing off, and the lion still had some strength left in him. Mark stepped back, giving the lion some space to gather his senses. The lion's movements were slow, but he was no longer completely helpless. He struggled to his feet, wincing with pain but managing to stand. The bandages around his legs were a stark contrast against his golden fur, but the lion seemed to accept them without protest. With one last look at Mark, the lion began to limp away, heading toward the waterhole in the distance. Mark watched him go, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and sadness. He knew the road to recovery would be long and difficult for the lion, but at least now there was hope. As the lion paused by the water's edge, drinking carefully and warily, Mark radioed in an update to the conservation center, informing them that the lion was awake and able to move on his own. The team of experts decided to continue monitoring the lion's progress, and Mark promised to keep a close eye on him, ensuring he had the space and time he needed to heal. As the lion stood by the water, gazing back at Mark with weary but resolute eyes, Mark understood something profound. The bond between man and beast was fragile, yet powerful, a shared moment of compassion in a world ruled by survival. From that day forward, Mark and his colleagues regularly patrolled the area, making sure the lion had everything he needed to recover. The story of the injured lion and the human who helped him became a quiet testament to the delicate balance of life in the Serengeti, a place where even in the face of harshness, miracles sometimes happened.